Good evening and welcome to ITV News. This is Monday night's calendar.
Hello, thank you for joining us. Here are tonight's main stories.
Insult to injury. The widow of a Huddersfield man murdered with a zombie knife says she's disgusted that those selling them can profit from a government amnesty scheme.
That's just ridiculous. How can you make money off something that's killing people? I don't get it. Where knife crime is now, I'm terrified for when my kids grow up.
Rack and ruin, the race against time to stop one of Leeds' oldest streets from crumbling into the history books.
It kind of looks like a battlefield at the moment, to be fair, especially with all the building collapse. A few businesses have had to close, shut down.
An inconceivable truth. A West Yorkshire dad opens up on his experience of male infertility.
And saving lives in his name, how a mother turned tragedy into triumph after losing her son in a motorbike crash. Good evening. First tonight, a woman from Huddersfield whose husband was murdered in their home by teenagers wielding a so-called zombie knife has branded a government scheme to compensate knife suppliers as ridiculous.
Louise Dyson was at home with Calfan Saif and their 3 young children when the gang burst into their home demanding money. Calfan was fatally stabbed in the abdomen.
Well, she's spoken of her loss for the first time amid a nationwide amnesty, which comes ahead of a zombie knife ban, which hands companies £10 for every prohibited weapon they hand over. She's been speaking to our reporter, Jonathan Brown.
We did have a very happy family life. He was a good guy, looked out for his kids, always happy.
More than 18 months on from her husband's death, memories are all Louise has left. Though the family night in that became the last time they were together is one she'd rather forget.
Someone came in with a zombie knife to where me and the kids was, basically threatened me, took my phone off me and then went back into the kitchen. All I was thinking is I need to get my kids to safety. That was literally all that was going through my head.
In January last year, 3 men burst into their home demanding property. Louise instinctively grabbed the children, including their baby son, and ran, as seen here on CCTV.
As I've got across the road, Calfan's come out with, obviously he was in a really bad way, saying that he'd been stabbed. He was saying he was going to die. I knew from the state he was in, I already knew that that was it. But yeah, it was just horrible. My children now have to grow up without a father because of knife crime.
Calfan, who was 33, had suffered a fatal wound to the stomach. A major police investigation followed and 3 men were arrested. In October last year, brothers Aman and Sahil Ansar were found guilty of his murder and jailed for life. The former was also convicted of robbery, while Wahab Saif was sentenced to 14 years for manslaughter. Knives like the one used to kill Calfan are due to be banned later this month. The government's offering those stocking them £10 per weapon to surrender them. One UK company, Sporting Wholesale, has handed over 35,000 zombie knives.
That's just ridiculous. How can you make money off something that's killing people? I don't get it. Where knife crime is now, I'm terrified for when my kids grow up.
Sporting Wholesale, which declined our request for a comment, owns a firm called Anglo Arms. Rashaan Douglas is seen here disposing of one of their bullet lock knives in Halifax last October. He'd earlier used it to murder 21-year-old Joshua Clark and Haydar Shah, who was 19. Douglas was jailed for life in June.
I think that these businesses ought not to be rewarded. These businesses ought not to be set up in the first place because they are purveyors of death. Why would we need big hunting knives, zombie knives, machetes?
The Home Office said the scheme was designed under the previous government, adding in a statement, tackling knife crime is a moral mission upon all in society. The surrender scheme will mean tens of thousands of these weapons won't get in to the wrong hands. But for the likes of Louise, the knives themselves are only part of a problem that's left her without a husband and young children like hers without their father. Jonathan Brown, ITV News, Huddersfield.
A former professional boxer has been jailed for 2.5 years after he was part of a mob which attacked a police van in last month's riots in Rotherham. 30-year-old Luke Crowcroft was seen on CCTV footage trying to overturn the van outside a hotel housing asylum seekers on August the 4th. Sheffield Crown Court heard he'd represented his country as an amateur before turning pro.
Meanwhile, Ashley Lowe, who's 19, was sentenced to 2 years and 2 months. He was seen pulling down fencing, which was used to fuel the fire set outside the hotel, and going into the building as well as confronting police. Ben Beardsley, who's 38, was jailed for 2 years and 8 months after he joined the crowd and threw missiles at officers. All 3 men admitted violent disorder. Now, they've been part of the fabric of Leeds for centuries. And now a battle to save derelict buildings on one of the city's oldest streets is reaching a critical point.
Kirkgate has been closed since the dramatic and unexpected collapse of one of the buildings there this spring. Neighbouring businesses say they've suffered tens of thousands of pounds of losses as a result.
Now efforts to try to save the buildings remain that appear to have stalled, leading to some fear that they could be lost forever. Michael Billington reports.
Their medieval home has stood the test of time for almost 1,000 years. But time, in the end, has caught up with these derelict buildings on Leeds' oldest street. When one of them suddenly collapsed in April, it sparked a major emergency response. The road has been closed ever since, and traders say it's taking its toll.
Yeah, it kind of looks like a battlefield at the moment, to be fair. We don't know, but we've been told 3 months, 6 months, more than a year. We don't really know because they haven't started on it, so it looks like a big job to do.
Leeds City Council has asked for permission from the government to carry out urgent works to make the buildings safe. But the city's Civic Trust fears without action soon they could be lost forever.
You would like to think it was acted upon quickly. All the while, it becomes more and more urgent. You know, the buildings are in a terrible state. I think some of the buildings may not survive, actually, when they come to do the repairs. So it really is crazy that we have to wait for a decision from central government to do something that is blindingly obvious. You know, we need to get on with it.
The council also says it's been unable to reach an agreement with the owners on a plan to refurbish the buildings. We've contacted the owners who haven't yet been back in touch. All the while, though, businesses like Doghouse Bar a few doors up say they're now suffering from the ongoing loss of passing trade.
When it happened in April, trade was down thousands in that weekend, and it's just got worse and worse. It's increased a little bit, but still not gone back to how it was, so we've been trading at a loss for 4 months, really.
And so, to date, have you put a figure on it?
To date, probably lost in the region of about 50,000.
That, Stewart says, is unsustainable. This unsolved threat to part of the city's heritage now calling into question their very survival, as well as the long-term future of the neighbouring buildings, which he says appear to be on the verge of crumbling forever. Michael Billington, ITV News in Leeds.
You're watching Monday night's calendar with Ian White and Lisa Adlam, and still to come on the programme tonight. Not much to smile about. Hollywood funnyman and Leeds shareholder Will Ferrell was at Ellen Road this weekend, but it was the visitors Burnley who had the last laugh.
And after last week's chilly weather, it's all changed this week. High pressure keeping us fine, settled, and there's more warm sunshine on the way. I've got your forecast coming up.
A cyclist has died after a collision with a van on the Great North Road at Ledsham earlier today. Police were called to the scene at about 6:10 this morning. The bicycle had been in collision with a white transit van and the man riding the bike died at the scene. The van driver, a 29-year-old man, has been arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving and is in police custody. Police have asked anyone with dashcam footage of the incident to get in touch.
A pensioner is recovering in hospital after fire ripped through his home and 2 adjoining businesses were burned to the ground in Pateley Bridge near Harrogate. 8 crews from across North Yorkshire tackled the blaze, which broke through the roofs of the 2-storey house and the ceramics and jewellery workshops in King Street on Saturday night. Firefighters prevented the fire spreading next door to the town's council office and museum. A fundraiser has been launched by local residents for the elderly man who has lost his home.
Everybody's come together, people pulling round. As you've seen, people talking about setting up fundraisers, and it's only 2 days after the event. People have been incredibly supportive. One of the other buildings right next to the building that caught fire is the council offices, which also houses the town's museum. And there was a very serious risk at one point of the fire spreading to that other building.
Well, next tonight, the Liberal Democrat leader, Sir Ed Davey, has promised that his party will act as constructive opposition, even in Yorkshire, where they have just one MP.
But with the Labour government announcing spending cuts, how much difference can they really make? Well, our political correspondent, Charanpreet Kera, joins us from Brighton to try to answer that question. Charanpreet.
Ian, with the sun shining over Brighton, it can seem like anything's possible, especially for the Lib Dems celebrating a bumper crop of new MPs, 72, including the new Harrogate and Knaresborough MP, Tom Gordon. Of course, their leader, Sir Ed Davey, has wasted no time frolicking in the sunshine, beaming that his party is at the top of its game. But there is a cloud hanging over this new conference season. The doom and gloom of the country's finances, according to the Labour Party, and the spending cuts that seem like they might be an inevitable result. The Liberal Democrats have said that there'll be a constructive opposition to Labour, but they'll have a fine line to straddle because in the past few years they've focused their attacks on the Conservatives. So when Rachel Reeves said that she'd found a £22 billion black hole in the country's finances, the Lib Dems actually joined her in criticising the Tories for their legacy. That opens them up to questions, though, about their spending plans that they're putting forward at this conference.
If you don't invest in our NHS, you won't find the economy coming back. There are lots of people who are waiting for treatment, waiting to see the GP, waiting on a hospital waiting list, who when they are treated can go back to work. They can start earning money, they can start paying taxes. So I think you have to see an investor save approach to the NHS.
But as well as reforming the NHS, your party wants universal free school meals, winter fuel payments, the two-child benefit cap to be scrapped. Surely all of that isn't realistic.
It is if you take the measures that we put forward in the general election.
But in the general election, your manifesto was based on the OBR's figures from March. They couldn't have taken into account the £22 billion black hole that Labour has found since.
Well, a lot of the measures that we will take will actually help the economy grow. That's so important.
So that's what Ed Davies had to say. But Charanpreet, are the Liberal Democrats' spending plans realistic, do you think?
Well, Ian, their costings are based on their general election manifesto, which was written at a time when we didn't know about this £22 billion black hole. If, as Labour do and as they do, you believe that, then it's hard to see that their sums now add up. Carla Denyer, the co-leader of the Green Party, has agreed, though, in their criticism of Labour's spending cuts.
On the face of it, means testing might sound like a good idea. Make sure it only goes to the people who need it. The trouble is the level is set so low that this will still cause real suffering for many people on incredibly low incomes.
The problem for all opposition parties, though, is that Labour's majority is so vast. So the Lib Dems need to use this conference to make sure their voices are heard louder than ever.
OK, Charanpreet in Brighton for us. Thank you. Now, ITV Evening News continues at 6:30. Let's find out what's on the programme tonight. Here's Mary Nightingale.
Coming up on the ITV Evening News, the BBC's former chief news presenter Hugh Edwards is spared jail after admitting accessing indecent photographs of children as young as 7. Donald Trump is targeted in a second apparent assassination attempt in just 2 months. And baby reindeer's triumphant night in Hollywood. Do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Mary. Now then, the cause might not be certain, but a global rise in male infertility is very real and it's often a difficult issue for couples to deal with.
Yes, one man from Leeds says he was shell-shocked to get the news from his doctor and didn't know where to turn for help and support.
Well, he's now written a book called My Boys Can't Swim in the hope of helping others in his situation to speak out. Kevin Ashford has his story.
I'm sorry, Everest, but we're not going any water sports, Rubble tells her.
Scott Deaton and his wife Kirsty from Leeds had their daughter Maya following IVF treatment. That was needed because of Scott's infertility, which was news that came as a shock.
I can remember it clear when the doctor said, sort of along the lines of, it's not really you, Kirsty, it's Scott. And I was just shell-shocked, wasn't I? Just sat there, and then I got back outside and we were sat in the waiting room waiting to then go through like the next steps, and I was just like...
We sat in silence the whole way home.
I couldn't believe it.
Scott says he found little information available for men in his situation, so he's written about his experiences to try to get others to open up more about the topic.
I thought, I'm going to document it. I'm going to create a book, you know, and it be the arm around the shoulder that I think a few people would need that won't necessarily speak out.
It's very hard to learn how to communicate about something that, you know, you've never been through, and nobody around you has been through either as well. That's the hardest thing, when nobody can relate to what you're saying. People try to understand, but I think until you've been through it, you truly cannot understand how much of a brutal journey it is.
Male infertility is a factor in around half of cases of heterosexual couples who've turned to IVF to try to conceive. And many men, it seems, find it hard to come to terms with that knowledge. One survey found that 60% of men questioned who'd experienced fertility issues said it had had a negative impact on their relationship. 30% said their work life had been affected, and 40% said their mental health had suffered.
I think for any man who's concerned about his fertility, then the first protocol probably would be to have to chat with their GP. If they're actually in a situation where they're going forward for IVF, then I think speak to the clinic. Clinics will have heard all sorts of questions before, and they'll be looking out for ways that they can support people going through infertility issues and IVF.
It's not clear why male infertility has increased in recent decades, but it's hoped that by more open discussion about the topic, those affected will realise they're not alone. Kevin Ashford, ITV News.
Yes, it's good to talk. Right, it's Monday night, so of course that means it can only be one thing. Time for the weekend sport.
Xero Accounting Software sponsors ITV Regional Sports Report.
And Chris is back in the studio, fresh from your trip to the races on Friday. And he's shaking things up a bit tonight.
You know what, Lisa? I can't remember if we've ever started a Monday sports desk with ice hockey, but I think we've got to acknowledge what's happening at the Sheffield Steelers right now. Now, we heard how the Steelers became the first English team ever to win in Sweden last weekend. Well, this weekend proved they're just as good on their own ice. The Steelers won both their Champions Hockey League matches at the Sheffield Arena, 5-1 against Sparta Prague from the Czech Republic on Friday, and then this 3-2 win against Swedish champions Skellefteå yesterday. Incredible stuff.
Fantastic.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is incredible. Talking about incredible too, let's get on to the football now, and VIP at Leeds.
Yeah, who's your mate?
Will Ferrell was at Ellen Road on Saturday. Now, Will's an investor at Leeds United. It was his first game at Ellen Road. Sadly, not much to laugh about, I'm afraid. Leeds were beaten 1-0 by Burnley. The only goal came in the first half after a slip by Manus Solomon, allowing Luca Koleosho to run all the way from well inside his own half, unchallenged, and finish into the bottom corner. Sheffield Wednesday thought they'd beaten QPR at Hillsborough when Barry Bannon struck in injury time, but after an almighty goalmouth scramble, the home crowd was stunned when Alfie Lloyd stabbed the ball in with the last kick of the game to give QPR a share of the points. And in the Yorkshire Derby on Friday night, Sheffield United maintained their unbeaten start to the season with a 2-0 win at Hull, who remain winless this season. Huddersfield are up to third in League One after hammering Bolton 4-0 on their own turf. Josh Koroma scored twice. Ben Wiles got his third of the season as well. And then take a look at this, a lesson in how not to play out from the back. Bolton keeper Nathan Baxter simply passing the ball straight to Anthony Evans, who couldn't miss, could he? Elsewhere, Lee Gregory scored twice as Mansfield beat Cambridge by 2-1, his second an absolute beauty, whereas Rotherham had to settle for a point at home to Burton. After falling behind, the Millers went 2-1 up after goals from Johnson, Clark Harris and then Cameron Humphreys, but Burton equalised through Jack Cooper Love, breaking a few Millers' hearts. Barnsley were beaten 3-0 at Stevenage, and it wasn't any better in League Two. Despite Oliver Sanderson equalising for Bradford here, they were beaten 2-1 at Walsall, and Chesterfield went down 1-0 at Port Vale. Now, we don't often mention the non-league on our Monday roundups, do we? But we've got good reason to this week. York City's 3-0 win over Fylde made it 4 victories on the bounce for the Minster men and means they're top of the National League. And whilst we're here, we should also tip our hats to Halifax Town as well, who beat Eastleigh 3-1 at the Shea to move up to 10th. Just before I go, Burley in Wharfdale's Harry Brook has been named captain of England for the upcoming series against Australia. One of those games at Headingley on Saturday as well.
I know, I'm going.
Brilliant.
Looking forward to it.
Good for you.
Harry on.
It's going to be a great day. Let's hope the weather's good.
Let's hope so. Thank you, Chris. See you later. Now then, the Daily Mirror Pride of Britain Awards is one of the biggest events in the showbiz calendar. But it's always the so-called ordinary people, not the celebrities, who are the real stars of the show.
And each year, one fantastic fundraiser gets to represent ITV calendar and attend the awards in London. So this week we'll be showing you 4 fundraising finalists, with the winner announced on Friday. Our first nominee is Jan Swallow from Huddersfield.
Yes, Jan lost her son in a motorcycle crash in 2007. Since then, she's raised over £100,000 as a thank you to the charity which tried so hard to keep him alive. Sarah Clark has more.
Very, very loving. Whether he was with his friends or just coming to see us, I'd get the biggest bear hugs. We were very, very close.
Jan Swallow's son Graham was her world. But on the 25th of May 2007, the 30-year-old was in a motorbike crash on the A57 Snake Pass. He was given on-scene medical care by the Yorkshire Air Ambulance and flown to Sheffield General.
They got him to hospital in 10 minutes. He was in operating theatre for 2 or 3 hours. I basically had to be held up because I could hardly walk to go and see that my son was dying. Sadly, we didn't get to see him before he passed away.
A grief-stricken Jan was able to find solace in her fundraising. A thank you to the crew's heroic efforts to save her son's life.
That critical time to get them to hospital for treatment, that just drives her, because that's what the air ambulance gave Graham a chance. But unfortunately, he didn't survive. She wants a happy ending for people, and she knows that the fundraising she does goes to providing that care. He'd be massively proud, because he was such a respectful son. Yeah, he'd be massively proud.
In memory of her son, her first fundraising event was a skydive.
The adrenaline rush was just amazing. I did it because that is just what Graham would have loved to have done. He was a bit of a daredevil as well.
She then used her sewing talents to make toys, selling her crafts nearly every weekend for years. Since 2009, the pensioner has raised a staggering £100,000 for the life-saving charity.
On average, the helicopter goes out between 4 and 5 times every single day. So Jan's contribution to that is just phenomenal. It means that we can get to those that need it most as quickly as possible.
Every time we go out on a job, it costs around £4,000, and that £4,000, can potentially save a life. So the amount of lives that Jan has saved is unreal.
But what is real is the dedication the 67-year-old has to help others.
It was somebody else's fundraising enabled that helicopter to attend Graham's accident, and now with what I have raised, it has intended so many more. People have said to me, now you've hit 100,000, are you going to slow down? Why? Because it gives me great satisfaction, plus it helps them massively.
Well, congratulations to Jan for making the shortlist, and of course we'll bring you another fantastic fundraiser on tomorrow night's programme, with the winner being revealed, as we said, on Friday night. Amazing.
Yes, always such incredible stories and such incredible people. You've got your work cut out because you're one of the judges.
Laura and I are judging along with Dr. Liam from Emmerdale, which is very exciting.
Now it's time for the weather with Nick.
good visibility on the horizon. TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Hello, that Monday feeling will have been more bearable today with all of that sunshine we've had around. Though we started with fog in places, it's the sort of weather pattern which has the fog in the valleys with the hilltops clear. Quite often you see that with high pressure. That's what we have at the moment, keeping things fine and settled for a few more days before later in the week it will edge away. More of an easterly flow, a freshening one with more cloud coming in, and the possibility by Friday and into the weekend of catching a few showers. Until then, we are dry, and the air mass, even by Friday, has the warmer colours indicating that temperatures are going to be at or above the average throughout this week. Of course, very different from the chilly week we had last week. So feeling warm, especially in the sunshine, with the risk of patchy fog overnight and into the mornings. And that risk is there again tonight. We're not expecting anything widespread, but there will be some patches around. And bear in mind, it's a fairly good possibility of seeing the northern lights tonight, even with a naked eye, if you want to try for that. Temperatures a little bit lower than this in the coldest rural spots, especially the foggy valleys. Any of that mist and fog in the morning isn't going to last too long, clearing away to allow lots of sunshine to come through again. And it may be chilly first thing, but temperatures will be responding in that sunshine. Just bear in mind the onshore breeze will keep coastal areas cooler just by a couple of degrees than it will be inland, but everywhere will feel warm in the sunshine. We're expecting just a little bit more cloud to drift in overnight and into Wednesday morning, but during Wednesday that will break apart to allow some sunshine to come through. So fine weather for most of the rest of the week until showers into next weekend. That's your forecast.
TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Thank you very much, Nick. Well, that looks quite good, doesn't it? Nice few days ahead.
Yeah, it was lovely in the garden this morning.
Yes.
Really nice, sunny, warm, just what it should have been yesterday.
Yeah, well, you might get it at both ends of the day. So you might see those northern lights after you leave on late this evening.
Ah, right, yeah, join us for late, 10:30. See you tomorrow, good night.
Bye-bye.